There is a very big misconception that if you have in-house people, you have the best quality.
Hello and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, translation, and global communication. My name is Caterina, and today me and Nicola, the founder of Undertop, speak with Valeria Nanni, head of localization at Skyscanner. We discuss pros and cons of different models for managing translation and localization within a company. Let's dive in!
Hello and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where you can learn the best strategies to use your international content to engage customers worldwide. My name is Nicola Calabrese, and today we're here with Valeria Nanni, Head of Localization at Skyscanner. Welcome, Valeria.
Welcome, Valeria.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit about your story and your career path.
Yeah, sure. So I started working as a translator, in-house translator back in 2010. Long time ago now. So I started my career in an in-house team, a small in-house team of translators. And then I briefly moved into freelancing for a few months. And after that, I moved into localization, project management in tech companies. Started with Badoo, Ambo, so dating apps. And then moved to Vistaprint as a program manager, so where I mainly worked on machine translation and improving processes and workflows for localization, and finally landed in Skyscanner, where I'm actually leading the team right now, so more working on the strategy. And in my career, I also worked quite a lot on tools implementation, vendor management, and quality management.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So the topic we would like to talk about today is the pros and cons of different model for content production, international content production. So to compare the in-house model and the outsourcing model. So rather doing content internally or sending it out to an external, like working with an external agency partner. So what's your thought on that? Do you think there's a model that works best in general, or what do you think about this?
So this question comes up quite a lot. It's there is no one size fits all. Actually, I was thinking back, like now that I was talking about my career, that in every company I worked with, there was a different model, and it worked for them. So the first company, it was an in-house team of translators. Then in the second one, it was a hybrid model where we had freelancers, but also in-house localization managers that were localizing for their, the top markets. And then the third company was also kind of a hybrid model, but freelancers and agencies and also in-house people. And finally, at Skyscanner, we are working with one external vendor who takes charge of all the localization for all the languages that we support, which are currently 35. Although in Skyscanner, we were in a bit of a journey. So when I joined, there were 5 different localization agencies that we were using. And so we moved from a multi-vendor model to a single vendor model through an iteration of working with one agency and freelancers as well. So we went through, different stages, and this is the one that works best for us. But it really, really depends on the type of company, because you have to look at your own requirements first before designing. Each of the model has pros and cons of its own that you have to evaluate, first of all, by looking at what you really need.
So can you maybe briefly outline what are the advantages of let's say we say 3 different models. So everything done in-house, a mix of in-house and outsourced, and then one that is like you're currently with Skyscanner, where you're working with an external partner. The pros and cons of each one. So maybe it could help our listeners to understand, depending on their requirements, which model might be the best fit.
Sure. So with completely in-house model, you have the advantage that you have all of your people in-house. So, also when it comes to understanding the product very well, being in touch with your internal stakeholders, really knowing it inside out, and the training and the communication, everything is much easier because you're all under a roof. And as a translator, I was myself, it was also easier to, get to the right solution because you can brainstorm with others. You're really in there. And if you have any questions, you can just reach out to, the people that are relevant to you. So it's definitely very good when it comes to, like the management of it, like the efficiency, if you want, internally. But a disadvantage that I see, it's actually the cost. It tends to be quite high because you have obviously people in-house and everything that involves, right? And usually it's quite hard as well to get investment for it because you have to justify why you need a headcount. And it can be also risky if you want, because you might get to a point where maybe you don't have enough work for the people that are in-house. So if the role is just localizing, it may be that, you have moments of low volume and that can become tricky. So my advice in that case would be to make sure that people have at least a hybrid role where they can also play a role as maybe project manager or program manager or help with other tasks. So they are not just working on the language unless you have huge volumes and you know that this is going to be the same going forward. So this is my view on the full in-house.
And sorry, can I ask you one question about this? The in-house person able to help with different kind of tasks, because I heard in the past some people suggest that maybe the same person that does, let's say, the help center, the customer care, so answering the phone, taking care of translating, writing content, reviewing content. What do you think about this? Because those are very different skill sets that you need for this kind of different jobs. So
I was thinking more within the realm of localization or something in a way related to it that can be content maybe. So not like not like the person has to do like things that are completely different to their role, but something that can help the company within the sphere that they operate anyway. And that can be actually, now that we're talking about it, can be actually quite good at engaging anyway for the team member, because they can get to learn how to do things differently. Say, for example, in a good collaboration with marketing team, maybe they can learn more about how to handle SEO and how to help with that. So in my experience, that's actually motivating for people in your team. So that can be another added advantage. So thank you for the question, because it triggered these other role. And then the second model was the hybrid one, right? So having some people in-house and while having either freelancers or another localization partner externally. So this is a bit of a compromise, if you want, between like going fully outsourcing or having everybody in-house. It's more cost efficient, of course, compared to the having everyone under the same roof. It also gives you a good quality control, if you want, in the sense that if you have, say, your top markets represented in-house, then you know that the copy can be revised internally by people who know the product very well. And again, kind of similarly to what I said before, they can reach out to the relevant people in the company when they need explanation, and they can be briefed by people in the company. And also, at the same time, they can help with briefing the agency and the freelancer. So they already have a bit of a hybrid role, a bit like I was saying before, right? So they can act as well, like in with a couple of different hats. So it's also like, well, it's a model that actually is quite widespread. Many companies use this model. Generally, like the teams in-house will be quite small anyway. So maybe 5, 6 people, 7 people. And then the network of freelancers or agencies can be quite vast as well, quite internally, you would have still a good efficiency, in terms of also like how to manage, the freelancers and the agencies. And usually also when it comes to speed, you would still have that one guaranteed. So it's all in all a good model to go for, generally speaking. And also when it comes to getting an investment for this kind of models, in my opinion, it's quite not easy, but it's much easier to get approval for this kind of investment compared to having an full in-house team, and to also justify that over time because the costs are kind of reduced. Yeah, so that's for the pros. For the cons, of course.
Sorry, before we move on to the cons, I have just a question about on the pros. When you say like you have a mix, so you'll have some people that are in-house, what kind of roles will they have? Will they be like linguistic roles or more like managing, project management?
Depends on the company, but because there are some companies that have huge volumes and they really want people in-house to review
Okay.
the content, and also to localize themselves the content that is maybe more prominent, more important. However, in my experience, most times people in-house were also doing project management work. They were creating relationships with other people in the company and creating processes. So they had part linguistic role or revision role and part program manager, project management roles. And that's why I was talking about efficiency, because, you can rely on these people to also, manage the communication with freelancers, for example, or with the agencies or anything, the bureaucratic part that is attached to it as well, invoicing, anything that, tracking of the budget, etc. So you can hand over these kind of tasks as well to people that are in-house. So that's why it's quite efficient as well. And then, as cons, of course, you still have people in-house. So, it still has some cost attached to it. And sometimes it can be, you also need to be to create a good team spirit to make sure that things go smoothly, and that, you have quite good processes in place to ensure that, because otherwise, if everybody does different things a different way, that doesn't go well. But I don't see big cons with this setup.
And I have a follow-up question on this is about working with external freelancers rather than working with external agencies, because in this hybrid model, you say you might have both, depending as well on volumes or what are the factors maybe in choosing rather to go with freelancers or than an agency in this stage, in the mixed stage where you have some people in-house.
You mean like with the two of them, or just choosing one over the other?
Yeah, well, what are the, let's say, advantages of working with freelancers and the disadvantages, and the same for working on agency maybe sometimes?
So, well, with freelancers, it can be a bit tricky when it comes to the bureaucratic part, because especially when it comes to holidays, that's a big thing. When you have freelancers that are unavailable, and in summer, most freelancers are unavailable, that becomes very tricky because you don't know what to do, because, you don't have a big pool generally of freelancers for a specific language. So you have to do what you can with the people. So it means that either you have to deliver late and you need to inform the business that, you're not going to deliver at the usual times, or you have to have a bigger pool of linguists, but then it's very hard to keep the linguists engaged if you don't work with them a lot.
And trained as well. Yeah,
exactly. And there is also another part that comes before this, actually, which is when you're creating the pool of translators, it takes quite some time to select them, sourcing them. It's a job per se. So depending on how many languages you have, if you have 5 languages, maybe it's not a huge task. But if you have 30, 40 languages, even just 15, it becomes hard to go. And how do you evaluate them? Then you give them tests, correct the tests, no? So that's the tricky part to go with the freelancers. On the other side, there is always obviously the human connection, and who is translating your work, and you can have calls with them directly. There are problems, there is a direct feedback loop there. So that's something that definitely a plus. And again, maybe if you have a few languages, that'd be a good way to go for you, because that's much more manageable. But then going to the agency, when you have loads of languages or a lot of content as well, you need to have many translators. It's probably the best option to go for an agency that can manage that part for you, because that's very heavy on effort. So with that, you remove that effort. You're not doing the translation agency part yourself, right? So you are actually giving this to the people who are the expert and who have the resources, who know how to train people at scale as well, who have their quality evaluation models as well. Obviously, there isn't that human connection. You have the human connection with the project managers that you have to build over time and make sure that you maintain, but you don't have that direct link. One word of caution as well for me, or maybe, my recommendation in this case, usually you have very big names out there, huge companies. And what happens usually is that these companies work with smaller agencies And then the agencies work with freelancers. So there are lots of steps there, and the message may be lost, maybe a message either on quality or even just on how to do things, practically. And so my suggestion and the way I went as well for Skyscanner was to look for small to medium sized localization partner that works directly with freelancers. And if possible, was also transparent with the freelancers that they work with, so that, if you had to get in touch with them directly for a specific project, you could. So you don't always have to go through them, and you know that they have the direct link and that they really care about the freelancers' health as well. So this is definitely something that I would recommend on my side. So yeah, I think we covered a bit of pros and cons. I went on a very long one.
No, it's fine. It was really interesting, actually. In the direct contact thing as well, and the transparency you mentioned, it's interesting as well in the sense that who's handling your copy. And because what might happen sometimes that you don't know who's writing the copy, and it's always somebody different, maybe you don't know your brand very well. So my question here actually will be, I know we have basically to cover the going all outsourced as the third model. So I don't know if you want to briefly talk about that.
We're kind of doing that.
Yeah, we were kind of doing that. So just if you want to briefly outline the maybe pros and cons of going all outsourced, let's say even to an agency.
Yeah,
because you touched a bit about that already.
Yeah, exactly. A bit related to what I was saying before. I think that if you choose the right partner with whom you create a good relationship, then you know that all that overhead, if you want, of managing people, finding people, training, as you said, people for you, managing the absences, and also managing exceptions, managing, say you always translate to, 7 languages, but then tomorrow you have a team that comes and says, we really need these, maybe for legal reasons. We need this text to be translated into this language, and it's a legal document of 500,000 words. What do you do? If you don't have the resources, right, you have to go to an agency anyway. And so you will have already a bit of a backup. You know that whatever you need when it comes to language needs, you have a partner there that is ready to support you. And another thing that I think is actually quite important, if you have the right partner, is the knowledge that they have of the industry, how other companies do things that you may not have. So what I appreciate, for example, in the relationship with my partner, is to be able to understand, other people's experiences, and also they put me in touch with some of their clients that are maybe faced similar challenge, and the same I do with other of their clients, right? And I think this fostering collaboration as well within the industry, or providing data, providing examples, telling you, hey, I noticed that you're doing this. It's kind of wrong. There isn't another way, a better way to do things, and maybe you're not seeing because you're very stuck in your way and you don't have time to be looking at this. And then because they've seen it somewhere else, they can tell you. So for me, this is a big pro. And there is also the cost efficiency, of course. So that probably from an investment perspective, when you pitch this to your leaders, it's a much easier investment to get, for sure. Because obviously you can show that costs that you have are really the costs for the work to be done. And obviously if you have less content, you would pay less according to the time. Sometimes you have a low season, a high season.
And what about the, let's say, technology side of things? As well, because let's say if you do everything in-house, you will have to start buying different software specifically for translation and localization. You will need to learn how to manage them, how maybe possibly you can integrate them with your system, setting up processes around that. How do you think this will work in the different models, maybe when you can count on an external partner that knows that already and might even provide some of the technology?
Yeah, so again, it kind of depends. If you have everyone in-house, of course, you have to go through that yourself, and you have to select your vendor and train people and make sure that people are happy. And usually they're not, especially at the beginning when they have to use something new. So the whole load is on you, for sure. And a bit as well in the second model, with the hybrid model, you are the one choosing that. And some of the, especially when it comes to freelancers, for example, maybe you choose a tool that everybody knows and, it's quite easy to use, and you don't have to do loads of training, but usually if it comes to, something breaks or something is not working, I don't know, the TM is not showing, I don't know, something, then it comes to you and you have to do troubleshooting. So that adds to your work as well. When it comes to the agency, it really depends who you choose. There are agencies that are platform agnostic. I think they define it. So, they can work with any platform, although usually they do have a preference. So they may say, we work with your choice. And then after a while, they start pushing for, there is this other one who's really good and we don't pay licenses because that's another story, no?
Yeah.
So the licenses that you have to pay with some tools and that the agency has to pay as well. So that's something actually to bear in mind when you choose your platform. But there are agencies as well that provide their own tooling and that are also quite advanced in the tooling, and they can integrate well with the tools that you use in-house content management system. So that's a bit of an easier choice, only in case that the platform that they propose can actually integrate well with your tools, because that's not always the case. Actually, usually content management systems in-house, either built in-house or content management systems from third parties that are used in an enterprise, are very much customized sometimes to a point that it's really hard to create an integration. And this happened, with us recently. So we want to integrate a tool, a third-party tool, with a tool that our translation agency provides. It's impossible because we set it up so in such a weird way that it's very, very hard. So
I think we can do a whole episode about integration. Exactly. And it probably wouldn't be enough.
So the key takeaway here is that if you are going to go for an agency that provides their own tooling, before signing anything, make sure that you involve engineers and see if the tools are compatible, or what are the tweaks that you have to do to make it work. And then in that case, yes, it's much easier in terms of like management because it's on their side, on the training because it's on their side, and sometimes also you get the tool for free, which is a very nice bonus compared to having to choose it yourself, pay for it yourself, do the troubleshooting yourself. So
and the another question that I want to ask you is, because before, obviously, one of the positive side, I think, that you mentioned about the, let's say, all in-house model or the hybrid one compared to the outsourcing, which can still be done in the outsourcing, but it's less common. Let's say is the direct contact and the making sure that the people working on the copy, who they are, they understand your product, understand your tone of voice. So what recommendation would you give to companies to how they can make sure that the external partner is aligned with your brand and your messaging? How do you have any specific suggestion about that? How they can actually, let's say, help with this?
Well, I'm going to say something very, like the communication. Open communication. One thing that worked for us is once we started working with our partner, we made sure that we revamped together our tone of voice, style guides, glossaries with them. And we did that for the main languages, for the top languages, we did that together. So we had a representative from Skyscanner and then, getting in touch with the language lead for that specific language, say Japanese, and they worked on together. So in that case, you really have a direct exchange. And if there are doubts or if there are questions or also disagreements, because we haven't spoken much about quality, but there is a whole
it's another episode,
So in order to first align is that, to make sure that both parties are involved in the creation of the language assets that then you're going to be referring to continuously as you work. So that for sure. And also when it comes to send out the translation request, making sure that you have a very good system set up so that translators and the agency, the translators have the full context, or as much context as possible. So, they have a screenshot, they have an identification of the string so that is it, maybe an Android string or is it a web string? Where does it go? A comment, like if you click this button, what happens after? Not just saying this is a button, no, right? What's the action that happens? What do we want the users to be able to do? Character count, if necessary, for example. So, all this information that already you give. And then this is more like for, say, ongoing work. But if you have something like marketing campaign or something that is a bit more creative or very important. The brief is super, super important to make sure that, like all the information that your team has is transferred. And if this means having to have ad hoc meetings with the agency, even between, say, maybe you have a brand team, you can have them doing the training. You don't have necessarily to be there, like as long as the information is transferred. So that's the paramount. And sometimes this means that on your side, you have to do quite a lot of internal work to get there, because we know that sometimes translation is at the end of the flow. So you don't want to be in that position, because otherwise you won't be able to give the right information to the agency. That is also, prejudicates quality. So, maybe the campaign has been in the making for 2 months and you only have 2 days to get it translated. Yeah. So 2 months for English and 2 days for like 20, 30 languages. That's how you can also talk about it in the companies, to make people understand that, you need time, because you are actually recreating the copy. Yeah. You're not just, I know that we use this like just translated. You're doing a whole effort of recreating it. So it means looking into your own processes internally too.
Yeah, and then you don't know what worked in, let's say, in the US. Would it work with the same impact in Japan? Maybe it needs a little bit more reworking that you actually initially thought, and involving the localization department and the agency in the earlier stage actually helps quite a lot.
Yeah. And especially if the brand team has been doing tests. Have you been involved in these tests, or have they only tested in, as you say, US maybe, So that is work that comes from the enterprise side, and it's something that if you see that this is not happening, it's something that you have to work on.
Kathy, maybe you have some questions?
Well, actually, I would like to know if there is anything else that you would like to add.
Yeah, well, one thing that I wanted to talk about very briefly about quality. There is a very big misconception that if you have in-house people, you have the best quality, while that if you go with an agency, that is not the case. And I can tell you that that's not right. Actually, it's in my experience. So very recently, I was speaking with a representative from another company, still in the travel industry, a very big one. And they have all their copywriters and the localization experts in-house. And guess what was the biggest problem that he was having? It was complaining about quality. It was like, we have problems with quality. I'm like, in my head, I was like, wow, how, I always thought as well that, it's easier to have better quality because, you have all the tools and the knowledge and all that. You have to have a good quality management process in place, both if you have everyone in-house or if you have external, like if you work with an external partner. And, so that's for sure something to take into consideration. And then one last thing as well, while you're looking for a localization partner, of course, you will have your own requirements, so you will have your short list of people or companies. And when you choose the 1-2 companies that you think would be good for you, make sure that you do a pilot with them. Don't only ask for, translation test, because translation test is a one-off. Of course, they're going to do it amazingly well. And it doesn't give you also an idea of the collaboration, because that's what's really important. How do they collaborate with you? Do they ask the right questions? Do they get in touch when they need? Do they respect the deadlines, which is a very basic one? Are they proactive, or are they just like, hey, here we go, here's the translation and that's that? Do they help you reach your objectives? So do a pilot, work with them for a month before actually deciding to choose to go with one or another. Definitely, it gives you a very good all-round idea of how you can work with the partner, and if that's the right match for you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and thanks to all the listeners who joined us today, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Underdog. We help companies translate their content into results. Get in touch if you want to know more. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. See you next time.